I am really, really jealous of a poet, a Welsh poet at the moment. I've just been looking at the BBC website, the BBC News website for Wales, and it says Christian Voice Halts book launch. Patrick Jones, who's a brother of one of the members of Manic Street Preachers, was releasing a book of poetry at the Cardiff Waterstones. And Christian Voice, those are the nutcases that got Jerry Springer the Opera I think they cancelled its tour or something like that because they picketed every night of Jerry Springer the Opera at his theatre run in London. They've threatened to picket the launch of a book of poetry at Waterstones, Cardiff, and the poetry launch was called off by Waterstones by what could be called the spineless saps at Waterstones, Cardiff. But I think actually they got something going on in there, in the old noggin. Yeah, and because the first thing you see is like, I make a living from the poetry scene in London. I'm a poet myself, but I'm also involved in publishing and in running live events and stuff like that, and I've got my fingers in many pies. But I have to struggle, man. I have to struggle to make ends meet, and to get publicity, just to get any publicity from the national press for a launch of a book of poetry. I'm telling you, it just doesn't happen. So when I look and I see BBC News, Christian group Halts book launch, you can't buy publicity like this. You just can't buy it. And it's great because there's a picture here. You can't see it, but it's a picture of the poet. The main picture is the poet looking despondent, like, what kind of world is this? While holding his book up towards the camera. So, he's just basically just got this wonderful publicity. And I know the publishers have been, the publishers sort of saying, we're going to launch a national campaign, this is disgraceful. Oh, they must be laughing. They must be selling copies like anything now. The amount of publicity this has got them. It's fantastic. Well, good on you. I mean, I wish I could get that kind of publicity. And a book launch, a poetry book launch, is all about publicising the event. I've also looked on the website, and Waterstones still stock this book. So what's happened? The poetry book launch didn't happen, and yet at the same time got the book more publicity than a normal conventional launch would have allowed. I read that the poet continued to launch his book on the pavement outside the store, so it's still stocked in the store. So basically what happened is that rather than a normal poetry book launch, which would have gone off without event in a bookstore, which happens all the time, they got national publicity instead. You can't buy that. Basically, Christian Voice turned this book launch into a resounding success. Good luck to the author. I hope he sells plenty of books because of it. And I think if he does sell plenty of books, which he probably will, for poetry books don't sell a lot, other poetry publishers and other poetry groups are going to look and they're going to prick up their ears, and the next book's going to be called Jesus Was a Batty Man, and Jesus was a Muslim, and Jesus Loves Jerry Springer the Opera, and people are just going to Christian Voice will turn up at the event. The more publicity all the time will just turn into a big old Christian Voice have just really encouraged every poet to just turn their work into Jesus hate. The actual line that Christopher Green, the horrible, odious Christopher Green, who is the head of Christian Voice, a really, really, really terrible, foolish man, we actually quoted, however, Waterstones are still selling Jones's book, Darkness is Where the Stars Are. Thank you for mentioning the title, Christopher Green. Give it the full publicity, which is full of anti-Christian rhetoric and profanity. The poems, some of which Patrick Jones sent me yesterday morning in an act of hubris. In an act of hubris? Was this before you called off a launch? So let me say, okay, Patrick Jones sent you some poems, and you immediately called up your troops to stop his book launch and protest it. This man has got... Patrick Jones, you are a master publicist. That was a master stroke of self-publicity. I bet inboxes are just full of Stephen Green's inbox is just full of messages from poets going, "I'm doing a launch. It's called Mother Mary, you dirty slag in blue," or something like that. I bet you it's just his inbox is full of stuff like this. So anyway, Patrick Jones sent me these poems yesterday morning in an act of hubris. Aren't actually much good, but they possibly have enough profanity and references to female genitalia, because there's no references to female genitalia in the Bible. Actually, yeah, because you can't basically mention a fanny. A book can be about the whole world, about everything. People will hold up the Bible and say this answers every question in life, and yet there's hardly one reference to the pum pum. What's all that about? I mean, surely it's slightly important. As Hitchens called it, it's a one-way street. But actually, I've read translations of the Song of Solomon, and if you look at the King James Version, there's lots of references to drinking from the cup of her navel, and when translated from the original ancient Hebrew, basically navel, every reference to a navel is really a reference to the vulva. So there's lots of references to cunnilingus in the Bible and stuff like that. But it's really interesting. I mean, why fear the fanny? So, by the way, if there's any Americans watching this, fanny in Britain is front bottom rather than conventional bottom. So, which is why we always laugh when you say stuff like, "I fell on my fanny," and stuff like that. We go, Waterstones. So here. One of these poems included the blasphemous, if not terribly original line, "Just like Mary Magdalene, I fucked Jesus." Now, I think that I know what you mean. It's not original. A better line would have been like, "I fucked Jesus, just like Judas." You see, that's thinking. Up here for thinking, down here for walking. So that's it, really. I mean, well done to Joe. I mean, yeah. So what it looks like is Jones sent his poetry to Christopher Green and Stephen Green. Sorry, Christopher Green was someone my brother went to school with, but Stephen Green. And Stephen Green completely just fell for it hook, line and sinker, and I'm sure the publisher will carry on their mock outrage against freedom of speech, and Waterstones will continue to stock the book, which I'm sure will sell a fair few copies. And good luck to the poetical career of Mr. Jones. Well done.